Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the command deck of the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship, as it drifted in orbit above Earth. Through the viewport stretched a horizon of stars, fragile and eternal, scattered across the black sea of the void. It should have been a moment of peace. Humanity, for the first time in centuries, stood united beneath one flag, with colonies spread across 17 distant star systems. Morrison often thought of that when gazing at the stars, that each tiny spark of light might be a sun with children of Earth building homes beneath its glow. But peace in space has always been fragile. And that illusion shattered when the alarms began screaming. "Sir!" Captain Lisa Grant's voice cracked as she rushed to Morrison's side, her face pale. "We've got multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace." The tactical display lit up in violent bursts of red. 3,000 ships, at least. And, Admiral, they're not human. Morrison's heart faltered for a beat as the main viewscreen filled with forms so alien they seemed more like natural phenomena than vessels of war. Ships unlike anything humanity had ever seen emerged into orbit above Earth. They looked like colossal shards of crystal, glowing with veins of cold blue and violet light. Some were so massive they dwarfed the Defiance, and their sheer numbers blotted out the stars themselves. It was as if the night sky had collapsed, suffocating the world in a cage of glass and light. "Get me Earth Command," Morrison ordered, his voice sharp. "Every ship in the Sol system goes to high alert. Immediately." The alien fleet didn't hesitate. Their ships moved into an exact, symmetrical formation, an orbital sphere around the entire planet, a net from which there would be no escape. Commander Alex Burke ran his hands over the tactical console, trying to keep count. "Admiral, I'm reading, over 3,000 combat vessels. Their weapons systems don't match anything in our database." Morrison said nothing, but the math was undeniable. Humanity had perhaps 400 ships in total, and most were scattered across distant colonies, far beyond Sol. Of those that remained, many were converted cargo freighters, not warships. Earth was surrounded. Outnumbered 8-1. Outclassed by technology humanity couldn't begin to measure. "Sir," Lieutenant Sam Davis called from communications. "We're receiving a transmission. Wideband. It's going out to every human settlement in known space." The bridge fell silent as the main screen flickered. And then, humanity saw its enemy. The figure was monstrous and majestic, a being of living crystal. Its glass-like skin refracted shifting lights from within, veins of violet fire running through its frame. It had 4 arms, each moving with alien grace, and eyes like pits of black infinity. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of glass breaking beneath thunder. "Primitive humans," it declared, its arms spread wide, as if it embraced not a world but the whole of existence. "I am Overlord Kethar of the Zahirian hegemony. You stand accused of crimes against the galactic order." Morrison felt his chest burn with anger even as icy dread coiled in his stomach. He had feared this moment, the day when humanity's reach into the stars would brush against something far older, far stronger. "You have colonized 17 star systems without permission from your betters. You have constructed weapons far beyond what a primitive species should wield. And worst of all, you have refused to kneel to the true rulers of this galaxy." Morrison heard Grant's whisper at his side, "Sir, our entire fleet combined, maybe 400 ships. And most are freighters with guns strapped on." The alien overlord's voice carried on, dripping with contempt. "Therefore, the Zahirian hegemony, rightful enforcers of galactic law, demands your unconditional surrender. Within 72 Earth hours, you will dismantle your fleets, abandon your colonies, and return every human to this single system. There you will serve, not as citizens, not as free beings, but as slaves. That is the price of your survival." The being paused, its crystalline body pulsing brighter, savoring the terror it knew it was spreading across the stars. "Submit, and you may live in chains. Resist, and we will erase your species from existence. Earth will burn. Your name will vanish into silence. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the Defiance. The kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from shock so deep it freezes the soul. Burke finally spoke, his voice hollow. Admiral, they outnumber us nearly 8-1. And their ships, they're far beyond our capabilities. Morrison turned, scanning the faces of his crew. Fear, yes. But beneath the fear, something else. The same stubborn fire that had carried humanity from caves to orbit, from the first sail to the first colony ship. A refusal to kneel, no matter the odds. Get me a secure channel to President Carter, Morrison ordered. And I want a complete tactical analysis of their formation. Every ship. Every weapon. Every possible weakness. The crew leapt to action, fear giving way to focus. Morrison walked to the viewport, staring at the alien armada. They thought humanity was cornered. But in their arrogance, they had already made a mistake. Captain Grant, Morrison said, still gazing outward. How long to send word across the colonies? About 6 hours, sir. Using the quantum communication network. Morrison allowed himself the faintest smile. Good. Then send this message to every world we hold: the Zahirians just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Grant looked at him, puzzled. Sir, I don't understand. Morrison finally turned. His eyes burned. Not with fear, but with defiance. They think we'll break. They think we'll surrender like all the others they've crushed. But they don't know us. They don't know that humanity would rather die fighting than live on its knees. And as those words echoed across the bridge, fear began to transmute, into anger. Into resolve. Into the kind of dangerous determination that spreads like wildfire through every heart it touches. Burke, Morrison barked, find me their weaknesses. Davis, get me every ship captain in the system. And Grant, contact intelligence. I want everything we know about Zahirian tactics. As his crew carried out the orders, Morrison let himself glance one last time at the alien fleet. They had given humanity 72 hours. 72 hours until extinction, or something else. They had no idea what they had just awakened. And across the globe, from the corridors of power buried deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain to the smallest colony clinging to a rock orbiting a distant star, humanity would soon have to answer a question older than war itself. When survival is no longer guaranteed, who are we? If you were standing on that bridge, watching the sky fill with alien warships, would you surrender, or fight? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to follow this story of humanity's defiance against impossible odds, don't forget to subscribe and stay with me for part 2. The ultimatum spread like wildfire. Within minutes of the Zahirian transmission, every human colony, whether a sprawling metropolis beneath a distant sun or a mining outpost clinging to an asteroid, received the same chilling message: surrender or be destroyed. Across 17 systems, panic ignited. On Mars, markets collapsed as colonists rushed to withdraw supplies for a future they feared might not exist. On Titan, families huddled in silence around dim screens, the reflection of crystalline warships burning into their eyes. Even in the frontier colonies, where life was already a daily fight for survival, whispers spread through the dust and steel: the galaxy has finally found us. And beyond humanity, the rest of the galaxy watched. For though Earth had reached only 17 stars, information traveled far. The ultimatum was not just for humanity, it was a performance. A warning to every lesser race that might dream of freedom. The Zahirians wanted to remind the galaxy of the order they enforced. To remind them that rebellion always ended the same way: fire and silence. In the neutral trade hubs of alien space, merchants whispered that humanity would not last the week. Governments debated whether to cut ties with humans entirely, fearing retribution for even the smallest connection. And in the dim halls of conquered worlds, enslaved peoples bowed their heads, pitying the humans who would soon join them in chains. But Earth remained silent. No public statement came from President Carter. No response from Earth Command. The fleet did not scatter, nor did it move to surrender. Instead, humanity waited. And that silence terrified the galaxy even more than the Zahirian ultimatum. Inside the war room beneath Cheyenne Mountain, the leaders of Earth and the colonies gathered by secure quantum link. The faces were pale, drawn tight with fear, but the debate was sharp. "They outnumber us 8-1, said Governor Reyes of the Vega colony. "We cannot win. If we resist, they'll erase us. We must accept their terms. And condemn every human being to slavery," snapped Admiral Morrison, standing before the holographic table. "No. If we bow now, we will never rise again." President Carter's voice was calm, but hard. "What do you propose, Admiral? To throw 400 ships against 3,000? You've seen their technology. It will be slaughter." Morrison let the silence hang for a moment before answering. "Then we won't fight them in the open. We'll fight them in the shadows. The Zahirians believe humanity is weak because they see only what we've shown them. But the truth," he leaned forward, his eyes burning with something the others couldn't yet name. "The truth is that humanity has been preparing for this moment for decades." Confusion rippled across the council. Morrison activated his console, and the holographic display shifted. The galaxy map dimmed. One by one, new markers appeared, unregistered shipyards hidden in asteroid belts, orbital docks concealed within gas giants, secret facilities buried beneath icy moons. And then, the ships appeared. Sleek, angular silhouettes, painted black to vanish into the void. Hulls layered with adaptive plating. Weapons systems humanity had never admitted to building. "This," Morrison said quietly, "is the Black Armada." Gasps filled the chamber. Governor Reyes shook his head in disbelief. "You're telling us we've had an entire fleet hidden away, off the books?" "Not just a fleet," Morrison corrected. "A shadow navy. Conceived after first contact with alien traders 70 years ago. We knew, sooner or later, someone would come. Someone stronger. So while the colonies grew, while the world believed we were focused on peace, Earth intelligence built something else in secret. A deterrent. A weapon. Our last line of defense." The hologram showed black ships phasing out of concealment, their numbers multiplying. Not 400. Not even 1,000. But more than 2,000 vessels, hidden, waiting. President Carter stared, stunned. "My God, all this time. Secrecy was our only chance," Morrison said. "If word had spread, the Zahirians would have known. They would have struck before we were ready. But now," he gestured at the map. "Now they think we are weak. That we have only scraps of a fleet. That arrogance will be their undoing." The council erupted in debate, half in awe, half in fear. For the Black Armada was not merely a fleet. It was a revelation that humanity had never been as naive as it appeared. But it was not invincible. Even with the Black Armada, humanity was still outnumbered. The Zahirians had crushed countless civilizations before. Their empires spanned thousands of worlds. Morrison knew this. He did not promise victory. He promised something else. "They want us to kneel," he said, his voice cutting through the argument. "But we are not like the others they've conquered. Humanity is stubborn. Unpredictable. Dangerous. If we must fall, then we will fall in such a way that the galaxy never forgets us. And if we succeed," his eyes turned toward the map, where the Zahirian fleet glowed like a noose around Earth. "Then perhaps we will be the spark that finally burns their empire to ash." In orbit above Earth, the alien fleet held its position. 3,000 crystalline warships, motionless yet menacing, like a storm waiting for the moment to strike. The Zahirians expected panic. They expected frantic calls for mercy, desperate signals of surrender. But instead, nothing. Earth remained silent. Its fleet held formation. Civilian traffic slowed, but did not cease. And in the darkness between stars, the first shadows of the Black Armada stirred from hiding. Silent ships drifted from asteroid belts, systems that the Zahirians had dismissed as barren. Cloaked hulls shifted near gas giants, where storms concealed their heat signatures. And beyond the edge of known space, where human colonies brushed against the great frontier, whispers spread of something else, something even the Council did not yet understand. For in their paranoia, Earth intelligence had built more than ships. They had built weapons. Traps. Tools of psychological war. The countdown ticked on. 72 hours. 60. 48. Across the galaxy, conquered peoples began to wonder. Why had Earth not surrendered? Why had the humans not broken? For the first time in millennia, slaves whispered of hope. If the humans could resist, perhaps others could too. And in the silence, the Zahirians began to doubt. Because silence, when it comes from a species that refuses to kneel, is more terrifying than any threat. The day before the deadline expired, Admiral Morrison stood again at the viewport of the Defiance, watching the alien fleet blot out the stars. "Sir," Captain Grant said softly, approaching him. "Do you think we can win?" Morrison did not answer immediately. His eyes remained on the void, where the first black ships began to slip into invisible formation, hidden even from the enemy that hunted them. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know if we can win. But I know this, humanity has never been defined by the odds. Only by what we do when the odds are against us." He turned, his face etched with steel. "And I know this too, the Zahirians came here to teach the galaxy fear. But when this is over, they will remember one lesson, and one lesson only." He paused. His crew leaned closer, waiting. That it is dangerous to corner a species that has nothing left to lose. The Black Armada has been revealed. But will it be enough to stand against an empire that has crushed civilizations for millennia? In Part 3, we will see humanity's first strike, and the consequences that will shake the galaxy itself. The deadline came. 72 hours after the Zahirian ultimatum, the sky above Earth still burned with the light of their warships, 3,000 crystalline vessels, cold and perfect, waiting to deliver annihilation. And then, the signal came. The Zahirian flagship pulsed with command frequencies, a final broadcast to the world below: surrender has not been given. Eradication will now commence. The galaxy expected fire. They expected Earth to burn. But instead, it was the Zahirians who screamed. The first blow came not from Earth's surface, but from the dark. At the far edge of the system, where the Zahirians had stationed supply carriers and communications relays, shadows emerged. Black armored ships, their hulls invisible to scanners, detached from the asteroid belts. They struck in silence, engines cold, weapons primed. And then, with perfect precision, they fired. Kinetic lances, rods of tungsten accelerated to near light speed, tore through the Zahirian carriers. Shields designed to deflect plasma and energy weapons flared uselessly. The rods punched clean through, ripping ships apart in blinding silence. The first casualty of the war was not human. It was Zahirian. In minutes, their supply line was gone. Their command net fractured. For the first time in millennia, the Zahirians had been surprised. In the control chamber of the flagship, panic rippled through the alien commanders. Their fleets had crushed rebellions before. They had erased civilizations without resistance. But never, never, had an enemy struck first. "Impossible," one of them hissed, crystalline skin fracturing with agitation. "Humans should not have this capability." But the reports kept coming. Carriers destroyed. Relays cut off. Stealth signatures everywhere. And then, something worse. The humans were broadcasting. Not please. Not surrender. But a message, repeated across every frequency the Zahirians used. A simple phrase, in a dozen alien tongues. We are not afraid. Across the colonies, cheers erupted. On Mars, children ran into the streets waving human flags as news broke of the first Zahirian losses. On Titan, miners struck the hulls of their stations with tools in thunderous rhythm, chanting Earth's defiance into the void. And across the galaxy, slaves lifted their heads for the first time in generations. If humanity could wound the Empire, then perhaps the Empire could bleed. The Zahirians retaliated. They unleashed their fleet, surging forward in a tidal wave of fire. Plasma storms boiled through the void, entire human outposts reduced to ash in seconds. Colony after colony reported casualties, their defenses overwhelmed. But the humans were not waiting for mercy. The Black Armada was already in motion. Hundreds of shadow ships emerged from hiding, slipping between the cracks of the Zahirian formation. They did not fight openly. They ambushed. They harried. They struck at supply lines, at escorts, at the command ships that gave orders. Every engagement was short, brutal, and then gone before the Zahirians could retaliate. It was not a war of conquest. It was a war of memory. Every Zahirian ship that fell, every sudden strike in the dark, was a reminder, the humans had been underestimated. They were not prey. They were predators. Admiral Morrison stood at the command deck of the Defiance, his face lit by the glow of enemy positions. Don't give them a battle they can win, he told his captains. Make them chase ghosts. Make them bleed for every inch. And bleed they did. Within the first week, 40 Zahirian vessels were destroyed, more than had been lost in any single campaign for centuries. Not by overwhelming power, but by persistence. By strategy. By human refusal to break. For the Zahirians, it was unthinkable. For the galaxy, it was unforgettable. And then, humanity escalated. The Zahirians had always believed fear was their greatest weapon. They broke civilizations not with fire alone, but with despair. With the certainty of futility. So humanity turned that weapon back on them. In the dead of night, human intelligence transmitted false signals into Zahirian fleets, making ships believe they were surrounded by enemies. Paranoia spread. In some sectors, Zahirian captains fired on their own vessels. In others, human operatives infiltrated alien channels with whispered rumors, entire Zahirian fleets lost. Human weapons beyond imagining. The Empire is faltering. It was not true. Humanity was still outnumbered. Still outgunned. Still desperately fighting to survive. But truth no longer mattered. Fear did. Weeks into the conflict, President Carter addressed the human colonies for the first time since the ultimatum. Her image, stern yet calm, filled every screen. They came to break us, she said, her voice steady. They came to make us afraid. But we are still here. We are still fighting. And every ship we destroy, every life we protect, sends one message to the stars. Humanity does not kneel. The speech was transmitted beyond human space, carried on stolen Zahirian channels. Billions heard it, slaves, rebels, and neutral worlds alike. For the first time, they saw not an empire's victim, but an empire's challenger. The galaxy began to wonder, could the Zahirian Empire fall? But beneath the victories, there was unease. Not all aliens watching were enslaved. Some were silent observers, ancient species who had seen countless empires rise and fall. Among them were the Harari, a reclusive people of scholars and wanderers. They did not cheer at humanity's defiance. They did not celebrate the Empire's pain. Instead, they whispered warnings. The Zahirians are not the greatest danger. If humanity fights them too well, others will awaken. But their words were drowned out in the roar of battle. Humanity was focused on the war before them, not the shadow that lingered beyond it. Back aboard the Zahirian flagship, the High Commander stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. 40 vessels lost. Supply chains fractured. Colonies whispering rebellion. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire faced resistance it could not immediately crush. And then came a final insult, another human broadcast, intercepted across every channel. A human voice, calm and clear. We are not here to survive. We are here to change the galaxy. The commander's crystalline form cracked with fury. For he knew now, this war was no longer about humanity alone. It was about the Empire itself. And empires that bleed, eventually fall.